Hello and welcome everybody to Global Crime Fighters episode 2. I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. Before I say anything more, let me just check with the chat. Can you guys hear me? Because I just had a bit of sabotage. Is this okay? Can you guys actually hear me in the chat? I need some sort of feedback. Please let me know if you can hear me. Okay. I can't continue unless you confirm that I do not sound like a chipmunk. So, okay, right. Thank you. So let's start. Okay. Okay, good. I got to the feedback. Thank you very much. So let's start today. Today will be a bit of a higgledy-piggledy, smorgasbord of various news because I was busy the entire last week trying to, help some people. So I was doing that, and I didn't have an awful lot of time to prepare for today's episode, but never mind, because I have a backlog of lots and lots of things to say. So today, what I wanted to do is I wanted to remind everybody, especially the people who I knew, what the hell we're doing, what the investigation is about, how we're going to go about doing it, and what the timescales are. Okay, so this is today's plan. It's a general outline and giving you all the threads that you need to start investigating, and all the things that you need to get started. So this is what today will be about. However, before I start, I have to, issue some corrections, errata. So at the beginning of the show, I would like to draw attention to some things I got wrong last time. And if you remember last time, let me just share my screen and take you there so that you know what I'm talking about. So last time, if you remember, I was talking about Venezuela, and I drew attention to this image that I said stank of a false flag, of a Secret Service staged event. And that is still true as far as I can make out. But also what I got wrong was the ranks of these Venezuelan military personnel. And I was musing what the hell these 3 satanic pentagrams meant and the 1 pentagram. And I indicated that these guys might be 1 or 3-star generals. Now, this is wrong. They're absolutely not. After the show, I actually went back and I checked the Venezuelan military ranks. And these satanic pentagrams here, you can see here and here. This is, the 3-star one was a captain. And I don't know what teniente translates to, but it's that sort of rank, okay? So I think we're looking at these ranks here. So the highest rank that you see in this image here, this guy is a captain who, is meant to look like he's injured. But I said he's making the all-seeing eye symbol. That doesn't make sense. This guy looks like he's doing the devil's horns. And it looks so... oh, by the by, but you have to know that any sort of image that is released by the press and sent around the world is not just vetted, it is very carefully staged in many cases. So anything that looks coincidental is everything but. However, I also said that what really doesn't make any sense in this image is that you would have a civilian dude, right, go up and grab one of these, military captains, not generals, military captains by the elbow. That just does not happen in real life. You expect that military personnel can sort themselves out. I still don't know what these guys, what rank these guys are. I can't quite figure that out. Maybe people can help me. But no way do you have any sort of situation arising in real life. If this is the case, the Venezuelan military needs to be overhauled bottom up because they're all a bunch of Nancy boy losers, okay? But no way do you ever have a situation like this in real life. These guys should sort themselves out, right? They should actually take care of the security. This guy doesn't look like he's from the ambulance crew, so what the hell? So this, I personally, I think the guy on the left here is, I don't know what, the Venezuelan James Cameron, the film director pulling off this false flag saying, dude, you should be lying over there for increased dramatic effect. I don't know what's going on in this image or who the hell these people are, but this is not a real image. Okay, but anyway, so this is just a reminder about what we talked about last time, and the correction is the guy you're looking at here has the, you know, the uniform of a captain, as far as I can make out. And that guy is 2 ranks lower, whatever the hell that is in English. Okay, so it's not as bad as, you know, a bunch of generals monkeying around, but it still looks appalling. Okay, so somebody in the military high up needs to have his ass kicked over this bullshit, because this was nothing but bullshit that went down in Venezuela. Okay, so this is the correction. But today, what I would like to talk about is the fundamental basics of how this investigation is going to go, because there's a lot of things. So by the way, if I look sideways, I'm looking into my logbook where I've got all my notes, okay, about what I want to talk about. So this is what I'm looking at here. But so what I really want us all to do is bring each other up to speed so that we're all on the same page. And if you look out into society, there are some people who've done lots of in-depth research here and there. And there are other people who went to work and took care of children and just didn't have the, you know, hours in the day to do the same amount of research. So what we really need to do if you want to go forward in society is we need to bring each other up to speed. Okay, we need to have some sort of basics. Now, I'm an expert on some things, but I'm most certainly not the expert on everything. So you guys need to bring me up to speed as well. Okay, so you can email me, you can send me tweets. If it's something really important, send it to me several times, because my communication channels are sabotaged. If you don't get an answer, it's maybe because your message got lost. Keep going. You know, eventually you will come through, and eventually I do get your message. But anyway, if you think that there are any corrections, please email me. I, you know, try to read all my emails these days, and eventually I'll respond. So, but the question is, what do we need to bring each other up to speed about? And I would say about pretty much everything, because I found out that everything I was taught at school, I went to school in Germany and I went to university at Oxford in England. And I have to say, a lot of things I was taught in Germany at school were just plain wrong or plain lies. I don't think this was in all cases with malicious intent from the teachers. I think they have been born into a brainwash system themselves and have just done their best. But now, with the help of the internet and getting through to the best researchers in the world, we can really, you know, advance in leaps and bounds in terms of knowledge and figuring stuff out that previous generations could not. Okay, so I discovered that pretty much all of the history I was taught at school was just a blatant lie. I also discovered that I had economics and, you know, I think it was called general economics at school. A lot of the stuff that I was taught there were just blatant lies. Everything I learned later on from the press or public debate about finance was also totally wrong. And a lot of the things that I thought I knew about the legal system were also totally wrong. On top of that, I always thought that the police is there to protect us, but I now discovered that the police is working most likely for organized crime. And I always thought that the intelligence agencies are there to protect us from terrorism. And these days I know they organize terrorism, and they are organized crime. So this is the new world image, but it took me years of research to get there. And, you know, when we bring people up to speed, we have to do several things. Number one is we have to show evidence, okay? We have to be able to prove to them that this is really how it is. And then second of all, we have to be patient, because, you know, entire worldviews are crumbling and people need to figure out their place in this new sort of reality, which actually was always the old reality, but we all had our head up our asses, okay? So yes, that's where we are. But anyway, so now, this is just the basics, okay? We want to get to a stage where all of us are on the same page. And the reason why we need to be on the same page is because only if every adult member of a society knows exactly what's going on, only then can we make accurate decisions as a nation. You know, only then can we make democracies or republics work, you know? We all need to be on the same page, and only then, and really only then, if everybody knows what's going on, can we actually ensure national security for the nations of the earth, okay? So everything, you know, you ever knew before is pretty much a lie, so we have to figure it out from scratch. And the biggest lie is that you can have national security by just having a couple of highly empowered men, mostly, you know, take care of everybody else like some benevolent fathers. Of course, that's going to go bottom up, and you're going to end up with the biggest, most ruthless psychopaths in exactly those positions, killing everybody else, which is what we have now. Okay, so, but anyway, this is the goal. So how are we going to go about doing it? And also, what are the time scales? And I'm telling you, the time scales are extremely tight, because we need to wake people up, as it's called, and, you know, get them to recognize their position and the situation in this reality. And then we need to get them to act to help us stop various things like crimes and genocide and poisonings and mutilations and murders. And for that, we need their help. Okay, so the time scale for that is set by the time scale of the genocide, and the global genocide seems to be working to a time scale of, you know, roughly eradicating large parts of the population within the next 7 years. Okay, so if you want to stop that globally, how much time do we have to wake up the population and to stop the genocide by catching the criminals and having court cases and putting them into jail and yada yada? Well, the answer is not much time at all. Okay, so in terms of time scales, where are we now? We have had decades since the beginning of the internet with public information campaigns, and they are getting ever faster and faster and faster. So the public information campaign is pretty much behind us. Most of the things you need to know about, you can find on the internet today, if you know where to look. And now, as a global population, we are refining this whole, you know, navigating the internet and curating and editing content to get to the crux of the issues as quickly as possible, you know. So that is really thanks to thousands and thousands of YouTubers and bloggers and investigators and researchers and public educators around the world that we have this situation now, you know. And that is something I think we should celebrate right now. You know, the investigation is in full swing. So let's just say thank you to absolutely everybody who has already got us this far. You know, it's absolutely amazing. And if you really want to find out the power of the internet and this exponential increase in information that's available online, and the exponential increase in speed with which you can find pertinent information, you can do the following test. Either you do it yourself, or maybe if you've got a rainy weekend to kill, you know, and you've got teenagers, you know, so then what you can do is you say to your children, I want you to find out who is responsible for 9/11, or you say, I really want to find out the truth about chemtrails or the truth about GMOs, or name any topic of interest, and say, you guys have got 2 hours, or say 4 hours, depending on how many hours you want to keep your teenagers busy. And you say, within 2 hours or 4 hours, I want you to find out what exactly happened, who are the culprits, and what's actually going on. And I promise you that most teenagers can do this job within 4 hours tops. You know, within 4 hours, they can get you the truth about 9/11, who did it, how it was done, and, you know, what the current situation is. And if you don't believe me, you can do this test. You know, if you've got teenagers, or maybe borrow some teenagers if you're the uncle or the aunt of some teenagers, you know, so kids can do it. And so can you. And the fact that we can do this is absolutely unheard of. So never before in the history of mankind could you, just with a plastic box at your kitchen table, run a world-class international investigation wherever you are in the world. You know, you could have never, ever uncovered high treason from your kitchen table with a plastic box ever before, but you can now. All right, so this is the great achievement. So the question is, if you can do this, where are we going now? And what we're going, the direction in which we're going, so these are now the basics of the investigation, is we are going from uncovering the really big crimes in our society, and we're breaking them down, and we're playing one big whodunit, you know, globally. And we're now trying to find out who the key criminals were who pulled off things like 9/11 or 7/7 in London, or the many other, events staged or real around the world. Who started the wars? On what lies were they started? Who profited from the wars? Who are the criminals in these global conspiracies and these global money-making schemes? Now, this is what we're working on now. We are now working on getting names and getting these names into court. Okay, so if we're at this stage and we have a lot of information out on the internet, but we now want to refine it, we also have to up our game in terms of the investigation. And, uncovering really big crimes is difficult, but it's even more difficult to now go down into the nitty-gritty and really find out precise, connections, precise networks, precise methods of criminality, and so on. Okay, so for that, we need ever better tools. And then as we're trying to do that, we're also under attack in a global genocide from the criminals themselves. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to run an investigation under a full military barrage with modern technology. So we have to investigate, we have to shield, we have to survive, and we have to get the criminals and put them into safe, confined jail cells before they kill us. So these are the basics of the investigation. Now, the investigation, the global investigation, is massive. It is huge, and it has lots of different aspects. There has been crime committed in the medical field. So, and I don't just mean medical malpractice, I also mean using medical devices to maim and murder. That's one branch of the investigation. There have been huge crimes committed in the financial realm. Financial fraud, that's another branch. And we need to know about all these branches because they're interconnected. So the financial fraud has been used to fund the medical, the medical mode of the genocide. But then there also has been incredible fraud related to national economies. And entire national economies, for example, Venezuela, have been actively destroyed by a criminal conspiracy, and we need to learn about how economies work. There has been huge fraud with currencies themselves, not just financial fraud, but also currency fraud. And we need to learn how currencies work. And then also, as all the victims know, there have been, the development of modern weaponry like directed energy weapons and many other things, so nanotechnology, weaponized nanotechnology, weaponized neurotechnology, all of these things, and we have to run criminal investigations in all of these fields. And the real goal is that all of us know about all these criminal investigations. Every one of us is certainly aware of them, and most of us contribute to every type of investigation as best as we can. We each have our own preferences, our own, historical, backgrounds or our educational backgrounds. So we all will have our own fortes and our own strengths, but we need to know about all of them because they're all interconnected. Okay. So when we're thinking about what are the basics of this investigation, we have to start working towards building up a general understanding of finance, of law, of technologies, engineering, and physics, and chemistry, and biochemistry, and medicine. So we all have to become polymaths, in a sense, which sounds overwhelming. But then again, it's not that hard because we've got the best informational resources we ever had in the history of mankind. And we can, within an email, within a Skype call, we can get through to the best brains of this planet. So, one way or another, we will manage. And if we get this right, we will be in much better shape than we have ever been before. Okay, so that's the remit. All right, so now let's get down to the nitty-gritty of it, the actual basics of the investigation. There are different parts to this investigation, and in every single aspect, we are thinking about some sort of large-scale crime that has been committed that affects many, many people. And we want to find out how the crimes have been committed, and then we want to find out who is responsible, and then how can we get them into jail, and how can we make them pay damages to all the people who have been damaged by this. All right. So this is the general idea. So let me start. I would like to start with a couple of things, okay? I would like to go from the general today, and I just would like to throw a couple of books out there, which I think if you have, you know, that's another thing, by the way. As we're starting with this investigation, of course, you will have expenses, okay? You will have an expense in time, just listening to this, what I'm saying now. You will have an expense in, I don't know what, your internet subscription, you know, you might have expenses in terms of postage if you're sending off letters. You might need literature, so book expenditures, maybe equipment. If you're target, you certainly need equipment and shielding, and it will cost a lot of money. And it might seem like a total drain, which it is, kind of. But then again, I think we should all think about it like this is an investment. It's an investment into the future, and an investment into our health, our society, the future of our children, and our own educational standard. So what I would suggest is that you all make a budget and you kind of estimate how much everything costs, and you try to just invest in that sort of investigation, you know? And you just take it to be part of life. And maybe remind yourself that in some religions, it's just a given that you would take 10% of your income, post-tax income, that is, by the way, and you just use it for charity or something for societal benefit. And I find that ratio actually quite good, you know? So in other words, maybe 10% is too much for you, and you just, you know, use 5% of your income. And that's still great, you know, but I think we should all make a conscious decision that we want to all invest in this sort of stuff, you know. So I would say start off with saying, how much is my income? How much is 5% of that, you know, and then you just put that aside and you actively use it to invest in these things, you know. Maybe that's a good way to think about it. And always think this is not money that's lost. This is money that will at some point actually reap real benefits and a real return. And sometimes the return that we're getting is so valuable, it can't even be measured in money, you know? Okay, so this is so much about the funding. And also, if you can't afford 5%, you should learn how to do crowdfunding, how to put yourself out there, advocate for the right things, and invite money from people who do have that spare, you know? So 5% of your money could also go towards helping other victims or helping other causes, and really trying to kickstart things that need to be happening in our world. You know, this is also at the basics of the investigation. And then let me say one thing about finance, which is hugely important, which is, as we all probably know by now, finance, especially the one, you know, run by the banks and the central banks, is wrought with financial fraud. The actual basis of our currencies is entirely based on fraud and defrauding a large part of the population. And it's pretty much a criminal enterprise, okay? So we have everything to do with finance and our income and the way our economies work interwoven with large-scale organized crime. And we somehow have to disentangle from that. And we have to do it really quickly. You know, we have to slow down the genocide, and we have to slow down the mass poisoning of nations by GMOs and chemtrails and a million other things and nanotech. We have to disassociate from the old way of doing things. We have to move over here to clean money. You know, we have to go from crime money to clean money. So how the hell are we going to do that? And we have to do that with projects, okay? So in a sense, right now, we're all here. Every penny and pound that you ever get into your hands is entirely based on crime, okay? That's something to take in. It might not be crime that's happening at your end. You got it by honest means, but the actual money that's generated was generated by a huge financial deception. It was created out of thin air, and somebody somewhere is paying interest on that. It is debt money. It is fraudulent money. It is actually criminal debt that was outlawed already in the Bible, and we're still using it. So the question is, how the hell are we going to disassociate from organized crime and get to clean money and clean societies? Some of it will involve funding new projects, you know, so you have to use crime money and actively funnel it into clean projects. That's one thing you have to do. And the other thing you have to do is we have to get away from crime currencies, fraudulent fiat currencies, onto real currencies. And there was once a global currency already. There were two global currencies, in fact, which were truly global and were everywhere accepted. And these were gold and silver. You know, they were very awkward, and especially silver is kind of heavy to lug around. But still, until the middle of the 70s, that's the only thing that you could use to settle trade in, especially in the Islamic world, where Islamic banking dictated you have to use clean, honest money, real money. You couldn't use fraud money. You know, so we have to somehow get back. And if you want to know more about that, you can follow Karen Hudis. But then there's also another thing we need to do, which is if you want to get out of fraudulent money, you have to kind of get out from under the claws of it, you know. And fraudulent money is they are giving you a bit of money, like a house loan, and then they're really holding you enslaved with the debt, with the interest, and especially the interest on interest. Now, the question is, how are we going to get out of the claws of this financial systems, which is holding you down? And there's one trick that you can use. And if everybody starts doing that, you can really supercharge your transit from fraud, crime money to clean money. And the way to do that is to work part-time pro bono. Pro bono means for the greater good. All right. And in real terms, it means working for free for the greater good. Now, your first reaction might be, okay, but I need to earn money. And I say, yes, I know. We're all tied into the old way, the fraud way. So we have to earn crime money to pay with crime money all our expenses in the supermarket and so on. Now, I'm not saying, oh, you know, burn all your money. No, I'm saying we all have to start shifting. And in this transit, we have to increase the fraction of the amount of time we're working pro bono. So you might spend 10% of your, or 5 to 10% of your income on charitable things, working for the greater good, using money for the greater good, but you can also use 10% of your time working for the greater good. So let's say you've got a 40-hour working week, you know, 10% of that is 4 hours. Can you, on the weekend, sacrifice 4 hours? This could be 2 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday, to work for the greater good. Because if you could do that, if we all started working 4 hours per week pro bono, we could get a lot of shit done, you know? And this could be anything, whatever needs doing next. So I would almost say the basics of the investigations are that we all start working 4 hours per week pro bono. My personal rate is, I think, very close to 99.999% pro bono, you know, and has been for the reasons of financial sabotage. But anyway, you know, you don't need to have my rate, but, you know, you could contribute something. And this could be anything. This could be writing blogs to inform people. This could be 4 hours per week of actual, sorry, it will sound silly, but it's actually highly effective, of targeted Twittering or writing letters to officials and documenting that by putting it up on websites, by communicating, by making phone calls to officials, anything. You know, if you spend 10 minutes of your, you know, lunch break every day calling up people and really kicking off, you know, hell with politicians, we could really change things in this country. But we all need to agree that we are in so much shit right now as global societies that we all need to start working pro bono, you know? And if you work pro bono, it's like, it's as if gravity is switched off, you know, the gravity that pulls you down. This is the old financial system, the debt slavery. But as soon as you start working pro bono, you are free, you are weightless, you're drifting off, because in those 4 hours that you decided to work, but for the causes of your choosing, no one can keep you enslaved. Do you know? Do you understand the mechanism? In those 4 hours, you are truly free. And you might say, yeah, but I'm not free because I'm not sitting on the couch and, I don't know, watching TV, or, I don't know, going jogging or something, or investing in my health. Yeah, that's true. But you are investing in something much bigger, into the health of your society and the security the general security of your society, you know? So that's another basics of the investigation. Okay, so I hope you guys understand where I'm going with this, but just keep in mind that as soon as you decide to work, actually work and do productive things, you know, and it could be fun. I mean, you know, I enjoyed most types of work in my life. You know, if you just decide to work for yourself and really work towards the common good, you know, you become weightless, you totally detach from this old crime money, you really cut off your shackles and the slave bonds on you, and you can put into place the things that you want to have in your society, you know? And as I said, we are a lot of people, you know, there are millions and millions of us around us. If we all start doing that, working pro bono, a certain fraction of our time, depending on what your time allowances are. If you're a mother of 3 young children, there's no way in hell you can work 4 hours, you know, or maybe you can do 1 hour per week, you know, or something, or work 4 hours, but tie it in with what's good for your children, you know, or maybe other children and so on. So there are many ways to do that. But this is pretty much what I would expect. You know, if you are serious about contributing to this investigation, I just expect that you put in 5 to 10 hours per week. 5 to 10% of your working time, which could be in Europe something like 40 hours, you know. So I expect that you put in 2 to 4 hours of actual active work. You know, that would be nice. If you don't have the time, or if you have the time and the money, also use your finances to start, you know, promoting this. Okay, so this is another basics of this entire investigation. Now, another thing that is really important, especially for targets, is equipment, okay? Now, one of the things I would like to show you is something I've prepared a long time ago. All right, I'm just throwing I'm throwing a glance onto the onto the chat. Okay, it's still going happy. Right, so let me show you something I started preparing, which is an equipment list. Let me share my screen so that you can see this. Just a second. Okay, so this is something that I started writing a while ago, but I couldn't actually quite finish it. Okay, so I'll finish it soon, I hope, and then I'll publish this document. Now, what this is a listing. Okay, will be turned into a PDF document and will go up online. This is a list of the sort of equipment you need if you are a victim, a target of the intelligence agencies or other criminal networks. The first thing that I would say all of us need is an audio recorder. Okay, so of course there are also spy audio recorders, but you don't need to go spy. You can just use a simple, you know, audio recorder, which also sometimes is called a dictaphone, you know, and I put the rough price bracket up here. But the reason why you need that is because, you know, you will make phone calls, or you will talk to officials or other people, and there's a lot of lying going around. And if you want to uncover lies, you need evidence. And evidence in form of an audio recording is worth gold. You can turn it into a transcript, and the transcript or even the audio recording yourself, you can submit in court, you know. But I would say now every victim should really start budgeting and getting him or herself an audio recorder. This is super important for the investigation, okay? The second thing, okay, there's a lot more about audio recorders here, which I will publish, but another thing that you might want to get is what's called a telephone pickup microphone. So the telephone pickup microphone works like that. You put it into your ear like a headphone. This end, you put it into your audio recorder, and then this little headpiece has a microphone here. So if you put this into your ear, into the ear that you're using to make telephone calls, the telephone conversation that you're having, especially the other party, goes into the microphone, is then recorded with the audio recorder connected in this end, but is also transmitted through the earpiece. So in a sense, any sound that goes in goes to your ear and goes to the audio recorder and is recorded in high quality. So this is particularly useful for mobile phones and other telephone calls, because sometimes you can put people on loudspeaker, but sometimes the audio quality is not very good. If you want to have top audio quality, you can use this. One word of warning, if you have a decked telephone, a cordless telephone, my experience is that the cordless signal, the headset or the handset going to the base station, the signal can sometimes show up as interference on these recordings. So please check it first, okay? But otherwise, this is a very useful thing to have, especially if you're making phone calls with a mobile phone, you know, on another cord telephone. Then another thing you should all have is a digital camera, okay? And ideally not Wi-Fi enabled. The reason why it shouldn't be Wi-Fi enabled is because as soon as it is, hacking into it becomes that much easier. So a Wi-Fi enabled digital camera can be hacked and images can be deleted remotely. If it's not Wi-Fi enabled, it's a bit safer, you know? The reason why I also advocate having a separate digital camera from your phone is for exactly the same reason. If your phone is non-stop connected to the mobile network, again, the intelligence agencies can remotely access your phone, or anybody with a Stingray device can access it, log into your phone and, for example, delete messages or contacts or the phone registry or many, many other things, you know? So for collecting evidence, I recommend that you do have a digital camera that is not Wi-Fi enabled in addition to your mobile phone for these reasons. Okay, then another thing is a power bank. And I mentioned this earlier. Now, power banks are super, super useful. They are fairly small. They fit into your pocket or your handbag. And what these are is they are a load of charge that you can use to recharge your mobile phone by just connecting the power bank as you're out and about, you know, you can connect the power bank to your mobile phone and then your mobile phone charges as if you had put it into a power socket, you know. So should you be out and about and say the police or the intelligence agencies drain your mobile phone so that you cannot take any more pictures, you can, or make any emergency calls or anything else, you can connect your mobile phone to a power bank and then your phone is still running. Now, one word about power banks is that I have made the experience that the intelligence agencies would drain my mobile phone. I would put in the power bank, and as the power bank was charging the mobile phone, they were busy emptying it. So in other words, the intelligence agencies drained my phone and they drained the power bank. So now, because these things are fairly cheap, so $10 to $20, I'm running around with 2 power banks. So what these guys would have to do is, you know, completely deplete a phone and 2 power banks, which is a lot of work and also generates a lot of heat in the mobile phone. Should they ever do that, my mobile phone would heat up to a temperature where I could just go up to a random, you know, a pedestrian and say, excuse me, sir, can you just touch this mobile phone and confirm that this is boiling hot, like unnaturally hot, you know? And then you can have your audio recorder and record covertly that this guy confirmed that your mobile phone is hot. And again, you have evidence that somebody has maliciously drained your mobile phone battery, you know? So these power banks are super useful. But even if one of them should be drained, you still have enough juice to maybe record evidence, you know? So I would recommend that everybody buys a power bank. And please do not spend any more money than $10 or $20 because you really don't need to. This is basic technology. It's just a stupid battery. Please don't spend any more money on that, you know? And any old power bank will do. So this is important to have. Now, the other thing that's super important to have for, I would say, everybody, but especially if your target is a dash cam, if you're driving. And ideally a dash cam that is filming to the front and also to the back. You can get a dash cam these days for anything between $50 and $200. You do not have to go for the most expensive one with electronics, okay? Because most electronics these days takes literally just dollars to manufacture somewhere in the world. So if you get one for $50, there's already a huge premium for the manufacturer, you know? And I would say if you're very tight for money, start with the cheapest thing, see how far you can get, and then incrementally buy better models, you know? That way you already learn what you need. you don't have to go for the most expensive one. But for your own personal safety, it is hugely important you buy a dash cam. Now, one thing I would like to say is if you do, please buy one with the biggest micro SD. So the micro SD card is the storage card. It's a tiny, tiny card that you push into it's almost like a digital camera. You push it into the dash cam, and that's where all the video footage gets stored. Now, because car journeys can take hours, you know, I would really recommend buying the the dash cam with the biggest storage facility that you can possibly fit into the camera. I think I found one with 128 gigabytes, and that was pretty amazing. So I just got that. Now, the other thing is, if you're out and about, if you're cycling to work, or if you're doing sport, please get yourself an action cam if you're a victim. Please just do. Again, this is $80 to $200. But the reason why you should do that is because, yes, they will try to kill you. They will try to cause accidents. And if you have this strapped to your head, the camera will see exactly what you're seeing. And any sort of malicious maneuvers, you know, that bring you to a fall would be documented, you know. And also, if something happens to your bike, for example, because of sabotage, and you fall off, then you can immediately film the bike and actually uncover the reasons for your fall and things like that, you know? So please do get that. And I'm absolutely serious, guys. Get these things earlier rather than later, okay? And start collecting the footage for evidence. By the way, you can use these action cams also if you're pedestrian. Strap it to your front and film, you know, what you can see. And then you can already collect evidence of gang stalking or malicious actions and harassment. Now, another thing I would really recommend for everybody, especially those people who want to communicate with others online, or they want to record their own videos, get yourself a webcam. You know, this is just a simple camera to strap onto your laptop. And some laptops come with inbuilt cameras, but my experience is that if you just spend the $20 to $30 on getting a separate webcam, a lot of the time you have much better audio and video quality. And these things are plug and play. So you don't need to install anything. You just stick this thing with the USB cable into your laptop and you're good to go. And everything that I'm filming with a webcam just like that, you know. So you can make the sort of videos that I'm doing or much better quality with this. But please also budget for that. Now, I've also listed the electromagnetic radiation meters here, the Acousticom. This is so far the best thing for quick and easy, you know, checking of radiation backgrounds. That one is pretty unbeatable. It doesn't have much directionality, but otherwise it's very, very good, you know. So again, this will be listed. Then if you're shielding, really the best shielding for electromagnetic attacks is still to this day aluminum foil. Copper foil might be better, but it's so stupidly expensive. Forget it, okay? Now, 1 or 2 layers of aluminium, actually 1 layer of aluminium foil should already protect you and your body parts from microwave radiation. It will just reflect it. So you can wrap yourself in this stuff. The edges don't cut you if you just use normal baking foil. And you can wrap your body, and this should prevent burning. So if you ever feel burning on your skin, or you actually have symptoms that look like a sunburn, but you're getting a sunburn inside your home, this is a typical indication of microwave radiation. And classical microwave radiation you can already block with 1 layer of aluminium foil. All right, so if you get burned at night or burnt in your flat, please get yourself this stuff for $2 to $4 in a supermarket and start wrapping yourself if necessary, you know. And still to this day, if you're being shot with pulsed energy projectiles, you need a lot more than that. But nevertheless, this is the cheapest and easiest and most flexible way of shielding your body parts from pulsed energy projectiles. And also, if you really crumple up the material, you know, for example, you wrap your head, I always recommend the outer layer to be really crumply, because then it reflects in all sorts of directions and you can actually make these shots audible, because they will deposit energy in a non-linear fashion in the aluminium foil as they are reflecting. So you will have an actual impulse that you can certainly feel and in many cases also hear. So aluminium foil is actually a top device for collecting evidence. It really is, especially combined with audio recorders, okay? Now, this is now a bit more advanced. If you have body implants, this is a bug detector. This is the one that I'm using because it has the biggest frequency range, 1 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. The biggest frequency range I've seen on the market so far. It is expensive. It's $210. But if you just buy one, maybe with a group of victims, and you each pay just $50 and you use the same bug scanner to scan each other, you know, you can go very far and you can collect already very good initial evidence for court cases. You know, if you use this device inside a home, make sure that the home is a detached home. You don't have flats above or below or next door, and switch off all mobile devices and take out the main fusers in your home, and then you can use it. Otherwise, drive out into a forest with this stuff, turn off your mobile phone, take out the battery from your mobile phone, and then scan yourself, because then background should also be very low. You know, if you want to do it professionally, you get this bug detector to find your body chips, and you also get this thing here. And with this, you can check the background, the radiation background. If it's somewhere really low in the green area, so 0.01 or 0.02 volts per meter, or maybe the radiation is so low that nothing shows on this thing. I also had that in a forest. Then you're good to go, and you can already start using this bug detector to scan for your body implants. Okay, right. And by the way, I'm sure that there's devices which are maybe better. And I'm not advertising any sort of brand in this document. I'm just showing you the type of device that you can get. And if you can find better ones or other makes or models, please, you know, go for that. This is just to give you a first idea. Now, I haven't filled out this document, and this is now the stuff that is, you know, is missing. Later on, you can also get a frequency counter to measure the precise chip frequencies at which your body implants are emitting. The reason why that's important is because as soon as you have the precise frequency, you can go to the website of the licensing authority in your country and look up who has licensed that frequency. Because whoever has licensed that frequency will be involved in measuring or reading out your body chips. Sometimes the same frequency is, will have been licensed by, say, military installations, research universities, and many others, and you don't know who might be involved, but you will already have a list of people, a list of suspects, and then you can ask from a court, you know, the precise identity of the person who has been accessing your body chips, you know, but you will already have a list of prime suspects, you know, which is better than nothing. And sometimes with body chips, you will have high net worth individuals, for example, who will have licensed a frequency just themselves. And should you ever hit one of those jackpot frequencies, well, you know, you already have your respondent for your court case, you know. Okay, so this is why that's important. Now, thermal cameras, I have seen images from victims recorded by, you know, experts, where you can actually see the body chip implants. I have tried this on myself, and I cannot make my chip implants visible with the thermal camera. And I think that's because my chips do not emit enough heat. I think they might be either, or maybe I'm just screwing up the calibration of this device. But so far, I have got this device, the FLIR C2, but I did not manage to do it myself on my body chips. But if you're a victim and you have intense pain from certain body locations, and very, very intense pain, and you had it for a long time, it's an indication that you have a body implant. And it's also an indication that very high currents are being generated by the body implant. So you have a very good fighting chance that you can actually see your implant on a thermal image. Okay. Now, beware, because these devices cost $500 to $600. And I would almost recommend you borrow one for a day. You know, you can do that. and then take the images and then return the camera. So that might be a better option than buying the stuff outright. Now, I should also say that the FLIR camera comes in several makes, or several models, I mean. The C2 is the one I recommend. There is a certain model called C3, and it's identical to the C2, but it's more expensive because it is Wi-Fi enabled. Now, for that precise reason, I do not recommend the C3 because it's Wi-Fi enabled. You don't need to spend more money, because then again, you open yourself up to sabotage. Okay, so don't get the C3, get the C2 if you get anything. And also remember that there are other thermal cameras. You don't have to get the FLIR. That is just one I happen to have. Now, another thing that might be important if you're a victim, and again, this is an expensive device, it's a Geiger counter. A Geiger counter is important because X-ray surveillance is using classical ionizing radiation, X-rays, okay? Now, you can measure that on this Geiger counter. But beware, because with radiation, there's also a background, and that background comes from the from outer space. So there are all sorts of astronomical bodies that emit gamma rays, and they shower the Earth. So you might pick up some of those. So don't panic if you get an instantaneous high reading. However, what I would be very interested in is if you get a high reading of always the same dosage, For example, I observed in my flat that I would get every 20 to 30 minutes exactly 80 microsievert per hour. So actually the number that's shown here, 0.01, between 0.01 and 0.02 is the natural background in most places, unless you live in a high radioactivity environment up in the mountains. But the standard numbers are between 0.1 and 0.2 microsievert per hour on this device. And what I observed is I would regularly get something between 80 and 90. So 80 is 800 times standard background. And it would not be higher or lower. It would always be between 80 and 90, always. And to me as a physicist, that indicates that, well, that looks to me like X-ray surveillance of my home. It looks like somebody is actually blowing some sort of radiation through the walls to monitor me. I still have to confirm that, but this is one line of suspicion that I have that I would like to have more data on. But apart from that, I certainly have seen footage from victims, and I think one was even Dr. Reinhard Munzert, who had a Geiger counter, and he saw how he was being blasted with ionizing radiation, so radioactivity, of, I think, 20 to 30 microsievert per hour. So 200 times standard background, 200 to 400 times standard background. And that blasting lasted, I think, something like 15 to 20 seconds. If you see something like that, this is most certainly an attack, okay? Anything that lasts something like 5 seconds or more, or even up to 5 seconds, is most likely a direct attack on you. So that is also important to know. And that's because anything that comes from the outer space, a random shower of particles, should be over within a second. It should be just an instantaneous shower. And I'm 100% sure we have these sort of showers, because even at CERN and at DAISY, where we had an underground accelerator, we would actually see these showers 8 floors below ground, something like 30 meters below the ground, we could still see these showers because they punch through absolutely everything. But they were just standard astronomical background, nothing to worry about, nothing to do with the intelligence agencies for once. Okay, then I wanted to fill in a couple more devices which you need, which is gas detectors, because a lot of people are being poisoned. Okay, so we have to start investigating the best type of gas detector to use. And another thing is ultraviolet torches. You can use these for several things. You can use them to detect contamination on furniture and carpets, some sort of nanotech type of things and some fibers apparently show up under ultraviolet light on furniture and on carpets. So that's very good to have. But actually, another thing that this stuff is very, very good for is, and it comes from a book, you know, that you should also get. And this is, you can use ultraviolet torches to make visible eye implants. Okay. This is now a documented eye implant from an excellent book, excellent for court cases, a thin research, document by Dr. Hildegard Stanninger, okay, or Stanninger. It's called Global Brain Chip and Mesogens. And in there, you will see, please get this book because you can quote it in court. In fact, you should quote it in court. And hang on, where was this page? So what I just showed you a moment ago on a page that I've since lost is if you have an eye implant, okay, eye implants are essentially thin film technology. They are placed on your eye, on the iris, and on the pupil. You know, some of them I have seen have little readout modules on the side or above the iris, above the colored area of your eye. And the readout unit looks very milky. It looks like a little milky oval. It looks almost like the white of your eye, but just a slight shade of beige or gray or yellow off from the eye. And that's the one I've seen. But the actual thin film technology on the lens itself is completely transparent for normal light. And what this thin film technology does, it's placed on the eye. You will not know that it's on there. You will not feel it. You will not see it or detect it or find anything odd. And that's because it's a very, very thin layer. It seems to be some sort of very thin film layer, maybe just, you know, a few atoms or whatever, a few crystal structures thick and perfectly transparent. But if you go to ultraviolet light, this suddenly starts reflecting differently from your normal eye. I think, if I'm not mistaken, your normal eye, so that the lens and the entire transparent bit on your eye should be transparent under ultraviolet light, I think. But if you use ultraviolet light, suddenly you will have these milky images here. And also, when you're actually seeing this, properly, you might get reflections on the iris or the pupil, which are turquoise or purple. All right. If you see that, what this means is that somebody placed an implant, eye implant on your eye. Now, what the eye implant will do is, first of all, it's like a little camera lens. And with the processing unit, what you see can be sent via radio frequency to whoever, wants to tap into this implant, so other people can see what you're seeing. Let's say in the bathroom or in your bedroom or in any sort of private place, whatever, wherever you have radio communication, people can see what you're seeing. So if you have any sort of harassment or stalking that is very finely tuned to what you can see, you might have an eye implant. Now, eye implants cannot just receive images, they can also broadcast images. And what this eye implant will do is, in this crystal structure, it's like a little transparent LCD screen. So just as you have your laptop, imagine the screen of your laptop put into a very small transparent crystal, and you kind of hold it to your eye. Now, you can imagine that if I would have it not on my eye, but just holding it like that, looking through, you could see a movie if it's broadcast there. Now, if it's placed on your eye and your brain doesn't know that you've got something placed on your eye, it will interpret it like whatever the movie is actually happening in the room. And using fancy software and virtual reality calculations and software technology, what people can do is they can read out what you're seeing, say in the room around me, and they can send images that will always appear in the same location relative to the things that you're seeing. Let's say I just look to the floor and suddenly on the floor I see something horrific. Let's say, a virtual reality image of a dead body or a rattlesnake or a huge spider or an alien or I don't know what, a black hole opening up in my floor. the virtual reality software is, and then the technology behind it is so advanced that in principle the intelligence agencies and these military contractors can make the projection onto the image, you know. So I look down on the floor and then I could, you know, they could project on a big black hole, a wormhole sucking everything in, you know. Of course, if I walk over my floor, I realize there's nothing there, but you could still shock a person. And then if I look away, the image changes, the software recognizes it's not the floor anymore, so it doesn't project it on. So in other words, you can have very advanced deception. And I can tell you all that I have stacks and stacks of victim cases where victims report exactly that. They say, well, you know, horrific stuff appears in the room, it appears to come towards me, it's threatening me. And, you know, it could be anything. It could be aliens landing in your front garden. It could be, I don't know what, ghosts coming into your bedroom at night. It doesn't freaking matter, because once you have this technology, anything that Hollywood can create or computer can create can be projected onto your eye. So the content of the nightmare that's sent to you is actually totally irrelevant. What matters is that it's immediately a direct indication that you have an eye implant. The quickest way to check is to buy yourself an ultraviolet torch of some sort of online vendor. And I think they cost about between $10 to $20 again, you know, and you just, you know, turn it on and you see, is your eye reflecting milky or purple or turquoise? And as soon as it does, you know, aha, I have this stuff in my eye. Should that be the case, please, please, please do not try to scrape it out of your eye, please, because I do not know how it's actually fixed to your eye. It might be fixed, you know, all around the eyeball and maybe having some sort of skin which is actually attached at the back. I really don't know. I have seen indication where that's exactly what has been done. It's kind of like fitted onto your eyeball, you know, and then you would need expert help to get it out. So I also don't know, does it also kind of like attach to your lens or any part of your eye? So please do not try to scrape it out yourself. Try to go to an ophthalmologist and, you know, ask him to investigate, find anything unusual. You can show him this test and, you know, work with him trying to get this stuff out of your eye. But whatever happens, should you ever be exposed to these sort of deceptive, you know, scare tactics, and you see some sort of crazy stuff suddenly appear in your room, or, for example, you're closing your eyes at night and you have what people, for example, reported is you have film footage from, you know, murders, human sacrifice, child rape, or even black and white films of Nazis marching, you know, Leni Riefenstahl film like. If you have any stuff like that, number one, don't panic. Number two, know that this is done by a bunch of dickheads in the intelligence agencies. And number three, look for these eye implants, you know. And the total cost is really just the $10 to $20 for this ultraviolet light. Now, ultraviolet lamps come in certain, in different frequencies. And the one that has been shown to work, I have to look up the exact frequency, but it's something like, oh God, I can't remember the exact nanometers. But anyway, I think the standard ones you can find, you know, on online vendors should be fine. So the box standard ultraviolet wavelength should already give you some sort of idea. You know, we can investigate if the precise wavelength matters or not. Okay, so this is that. Now let me see. As you could see, I haven't actually finished the. Oh yes, there's some more things I would like to show you in this list. Okay, before I do, let me just throw an eye on the chat. Okay, people seem to be generally happy in the chat. Unfortunately, I do not have the time to read your comments live now, but I'll read it, you know, later. Okay, so let's continue with this document. So these are the basics that you will need to collect evidence. Other basics that you need, if you can afford it, is a surveillance system to try to catch the people who keep breaking into our homes. Now, I do know that some victims have bought surveillance systems, and then they have discovered that the intelligence agencies disabled them. Yes, they do that. So don't panic, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a surveillance system. In fact, if that happens, you have even stronger evidence that this is the intelligence agencies, because they knew that you had a surveillance system and they used sophisticated methods to disable it. If you can prove that it was disabled, for example, because you do get surveillance footage, but it shows up all black. I have seen a victim who has showed me evidence like that. That, for me personally, is an indication that a jammer has been used. So the camera is working; it's trying to record something, but actually a jammer has, not permitted the image to be recorded. If it's something that cannot be hacked into, then you can use jammers to disrupt electronic devices like that. So it could be an indication of it. But whatever happens, please save the evidence. Start building a file of evidence for your surveillance system being circumvented by professional means. Okay. Do not just throw it away and be frustrated that they again circumvented it. Instead, collect evidence that they have done so. And by the way, if that happens, you also have a claim against the intelligence agencies, but not just that. The company that manufactures these surveillance systems, they have a claim against the intelligence agencies, because it means that the intelligence agencies have pretty much busted their product maliciously, So maybe the manufacturer would be more than intrigued to know that their system is rendered worthless by state-run criminals, And you can imagine that a manufacturer will be perking up as soon as you will start publicizing that their surveillance system is worthless because it can be circumvented that easily. Suddenly you bring in more parties, and more parties have an interest in stopping the intelligence agencies' rampant criminality, because it starts infringing on other business plans, on clean business plans of actually giving people proper surveillance systems. Okay. Now, another thing that you should also have is a logbook. I know it takes a lot of discipline to keep a logbook every day, but it is worth gold. A particular logbook I recommend is this make here. It just so happens to be the Oxford label, but if you can get one that allows you here a column to write down date or time, what I do is I write the date here, I write the actual time of the day here, and then I write down what exactly happened, okay? And then you can always pick a title at the end of the day where you are flagging what was the major event on that day. And if you have a logbook, on the first page, on the index page, please number all your logbooks and photograph the index page of all your logbooks to prove that you had these logbooks, because the intelligence agencies do have an interest in making these logbooks disappear. But if you have logbook number 7 and 8 and you're missing 4 and 5, we all know who took 4 and 5. And I can tell you that the intelligence agencies do not tend to throw stuff away. They keep stuff they steal from you in a warehouse. So you can actually request the stuff back, and we will do so. So please keep the logbooks, make a numbered entry on the index page, number all your logbooks, and as often as you can, write down into these logbooks in your own handwriting, that is worth gold, what has happened. And the reason why these logbooks are still very useful is that they cannot be hacked. Your handwriting is your handwriting, and if anybody wants to falsify it, that's a lot of hard work, So you can already generate evidence by just having a logbook. And some victims have logbooks running over several years, and that, I can tell you, is worth gold in court, So please buy these logbooks. Then the other thing I would like to advertise is a home safe, okay? So please do get one, and again, put your logbooks and your valuables in there. Should you find that the intelligence agencies break into your home safe or steal your home safe or whatever the hell they do, well, this is also something to write home about. And then you iterate, and then you start complaining about the particular make of home safe not being that safe after all, you know? That's also going to cause waves. But either way, you know, what you're doing with a home safe is you are increasing the level of sophistication the intelligence agencies have to show or, you know, satisfy to get into your safe. Should they do so in reverse, it's again evidence that somebody put in a lot of effort to break into your home safe. And if they steal things like logbooks, so nothing of value, it points the finger straight back at your national intelligence agency. You know, because no burglar would go through all the hassle of breaking into a safe just to steal a bunch of, you know, books which are not even, you know, new, so it can't be sold. Okay, so these are the basic things. There are many, many other devices that you need, but these, if you have these, you already have a good start. Okay, so this is the device list. Now, in terms of books, you should also have a couple of books to get you started. The first one I have already advertised. This is, I would say, mandatory reading. I do not have any sort of financial relationship with Dr. Hildegard Stanninger. I do not get any sort of advertising money for recommending this book, but I recommend it because in here you will see real life images of brain chips and stuff like that. Okay. Now, and also this eye chip, so you can, you know, use this book in court to prove what's happening. Other books that I recommend, and now I'm sorry, I'm announcing this on the English-speaking channel, but this is really for the people who understand German. If you don't understand German, you can still reference this video and reference the book. I would like to advertise the books by the victim called Peter Kutzer. Okay, sorry, I can't. I hope my camera can zoom in. Peter Kutzer, this is spelled, the surname is spelled K-U-T-Z-A. He has written not just these two books, which he was kind enough to send to me, he has written more books than that, and they are worth gold because inside he is documenting, number one, I mean, this is horrific, his injuries, okay, real life injuries from directed energy weapon attacks, horrific injuries, but also his correspondence and his measurements and his correspondence with public bodies. It's all in here. This is worth gold for court. And this is the book which goes all the way up to his court case. And I think this was after his court case. And the first one is called Verbrechen, Strahlen, Folter, which means crime, radiation, torture. And the second one is called Terrorismus in Deutschland, which means terrorism in Germany. Now, as you can guess, this is a victim in Germany. And what happened is that he went all the way to the German Constitutional Court, the highest level, and they have actually thrown his case out. After they thrown his case out, or while they were in the process of throwing his case out, the intelligence agencies went absolutely nuts. And this is now an image from his feet. You can see the typical swelling. They are swelling my legs, my lower legs, just like that. You can see the size of the swelling. And this is what they have done to his legs. So this is German intelligence agencies, so-called Verfassungsschutz and Bundesnachrichtendienst, doing this to a victim in Regen. Okay, he lives in Regen. I won't in Regen. Okay, so this guy lives in Regen. Now, I really recommend you get his books, please, if you're a German victim, because what you have is evidence of correspondence with the Ministry of the Interior, with every single authority in the land. And you can also, this guy went all the way up to the Constitutional Court and was not given right. And it means that the Constitutional Court in Germany is staffed by Nazi judges. These are Nazi crimes in Germany, and Nazi judges have thrown out the case and pretty much signed off on the continued torture and mutilation of a German citizen. This is big, okay? And you can prove it in court. And I know that he's not the only victim who is being assaulted in Germany by Nazis, by this Nazi system, which incorporates Nazi judges Nazi intelligence agencies like the SS and the Gestapo and so on, you know, and very, very important for evidence. So please, if you're in Germany, do get these books because they are one of the best documented cases. And should you be a victim in Germany, start thinking about writing a book like that and publishing your documentation. Now, another thing to get, if I would recommend that, again, this is if you're in Germany, I'm sorry that I'm saying this, but on the English version of Global Crime Fighters, but this is about global crime fighting, and I will make the connection to the British and the US intelligence agencies in a moment. Another two books that I recommend in Germany, it's called here, number one, the Haager Landkriegsordnung, also a big book, and it's called die der Bevölkerung in Deutschland weitgehend unbekannten Rechtsgrundlage des deutschen Rechts seit dem 8.5.1945. So, in German, in English, it means this is the state war, I don't know what, statute of Hague, which is governing the basic law, the fundamental, legal basis in Germany since 1945, okay? And in a nutshell, what you will see in here is the legal basis that says that Germany is still occupied by the Allies. So if you're wondering why Mr. Peter Kutzer cannot get any right from German courts by German judges, it could be that somehow related to operations by the Allies, which are running some sort of Nazi system, okay? Now, the other thing that you should get is, wussten Sie, dass das Besatzungsrecht in Deutschland immer noch gilt? Diese Chefgesetzgebung der Alliierten. So, in English, did you know that the occupational legal basis, occupational law, is still valid in Germany? And these are the laws of the Allies. Again, you will find in here the actual original laws as they were published. And again, it's indicating that the Allies still have Germany under occupation, which would explain why the US military is still at the base in Ramstein and is using Germany like a colony. It's because it is a colony, all right? No, but it automatically also means that whatever happens in German courts, like this Nazi shit being done to Mr. Peter Kutzer, is also a problem of the Allies, which is France, Britain, and the US in West Germany and Russia in East Germany. Okay? So, right, interesting. But of course, what this means is that if Germany is under occupation, all right, I, as a German citizen, am, occupied whatever property, perhaps, of the Allies. I'm property of Britain and the US. So any sort of shit done by US military or intelligence agencies or the British is also my problem, and it could be affecting me. And in reverse, if you have a country that is still occupied, the occupying forces have certain duties, right, because they have certain competencies and certain powers under international law. So whatever shit goes down in Germany is also their problem. And according to international law, the buck stops with them. Okay, now this tallies with what the, what's his name? I always forget. The former head of Austrian intelligence said, as it was reported by Sputnik News, and his name is Gerd or Gerhard, I think it's Gerd Polly. I always forget the first name. Gerd Polly said that the German intelligence agencies are still fully run by the British and the American ones. So, for example, Germany is still run by GCHQ and NSA. This would make sense according to these laws, right? It means that German intelligence agencies are still under the auspices of MI6 and NSA and GCHQ and the CIA and all this sort of stuff. And again, this means that the buck stops with them. So if I, as a civilian victim of war crimes, and a civilian victim of the intelligence agencies, am looking for somebody to sue, I cannot just sue the Bundesnachrichtendienst and the Verfassungsschutz. I can sue GCHQ and NSA and CIA and, you know, MI6 and fuck knows I shall, you know. But this is very, very important to know. If you are in Germany, you have these people as respondents, which might seem daunting. But then again, if you're looking for millions and millions in damages, you better make sure these people are rich, you know. And hey, they are. They have literally billions. So, you know, good to know, hey? Okay, so this is another basis of the investigation that you need to know. You need to know how these systems hang together, and you need to get the actual legal basis, the evidence in court, so that you can argue why you are suing the pants off NSA and GCHQ, you know? All right. By the way, if you're anywhere else, you're not in Germany, you're somewhere else, there are also international treaties between the intelligence agencies, and they are for the exchange of science and technology. Now, it might be exactly the science and the technology in your body that's being read out by NSA, you know? Okay, so actually one researcher, one top researcher sent me the link to these treaties, and I don't think, today I'm just not prepared enough to actually show it. It's somewhere in my email. I can't find it quickly enough, but, you know, we will have that. Certainly for court cases, we'll have that ready. Now, so just that you know that this sort of information exists. Now, another thing that you need as the fundamental basis of the investigation, here I only have it for Germany, but I can bet my guts that pretty much the same stuff will also exist for other countries. And the book I'm referring to is, again, a German book, and it's called Konz, Das Arbeitsbuch zur Steuererklärung. In English, this is Konz, this is Mr. Frank Konz, you know, and it is the workbook for your, what's it called? Your income, what's it called in English? Your tax return, okay? It's a workbook for your tax return. Now, you can see I've worked through this thing, and anybody who's ever done a tax return himself or herself in Germany knows that it is a rectal ache of epic proportions. But I have really worked through this stuff because I've done it myself. And one of the things that I have chanced across doing it is that here so I should say this is a book that gets reissued every year in Germany, and I have got the version for 2011 and 2012. But here I'm referring to page 60, okay, and it's called the Spitzelsteuer. In English, this is the tax that informants pay, okay, pay. So in Germany, here it says sorry, you can't read it. Spitzelsteuersatz nur 10%. In other words, the rate of tax that informants pay in Germany is only 10%. It is a flat rate of 10%. Now, every single person, every single tax advisor in Germany knows this, because when they have to fill out tax returns for informants, they know that these people just get to pay a flat rate of 10% on their income. But it gets better than that, because they do not actually have to prove, right, their income. So these people pay only 10% on their income, and they do not have to fill out a tax return. Now tell me, if you don't fill out a tax return, how does the state know your income? It does not. So in other words, if you become an informant for the state in Germany, you will only pay 10% on the income that is kind of the most obvious type of income that you have. Maybe you're in employment, and then your employer registers you as an employee, and you would pay 10% of tax on that. But if you've got earnings from other things that you just happen to forget to declare, well, you're not paying tax on that at all. Now, what this means is that this little rule is a mechanism for large-scale financial fraud. It is also a bifurcation of civil society. You split civil society into the oblivious normals, and you split them into the other half, the fraudulent little snitches. Now, the fraudulent little snitches will pay, well, very little to no tax, okay, and can commit large-scale income tax fraud and any sort of other fraud as well. Say if they're running companies, it gets even more interesting. Do you see where I'm going with this? Now, to give you an idea what 10% tax means, on page 59 of this edition, you will see a diagram showing how the tiers, different tiers of income tax in Germany. Now, my camera is not good enough to actually zoom in, so I'll read out these 3 points, okay? So income above or income just short of 10,000 euros per year already incurs a tax of 14%. 14, this first dot is 14. So under the basic income of 8,000 euros, you don't pay tax in Germany. But above 8,000 euros, you already pay 14%. Your little snitches already only pay 10, right? They pay almost a third less for next to nothing. But it gets more interesting because above, which looks like something like 14,000, you already pay 23% tax. And then if your income is above 50,000, you pay 42% tax. So if you have an income of above 50,000 per year, a normal person pays 42% tax. A snitch pays 10%, which is somewhere down here. Do you see? Now, 42%, right? 10% of 50,000 is what? 5,000. 40% is 20,000. So if you're snitch, you pay 5,000. If you're normal, you pay 20,000, thereabouts, okay? Now, a snitch will actually put away savings of 15,000 more per year. Good, huh? And this is just for basic income. And we all know the real money is tucked away, you know, in things like companies and, you know, income from other sources, not paid employment, but maybe self-employment, or maybe, you know, big incomes from directorships for companies, you know, like non-executive directorships and stuff like that, which people seem to, you know, clock up like medals. You know, some people have 20 or 15 to 20 non-executive directorships to their name. Hey, so if you became a snitch, you would have every year a huge amount of money. Now, as a systems analyst, I'm interested in the system implication of this. What you have, okay, and again, sorry, before I get into that, remember, this is a fact for Germany. Here, written black on white, how snitches are paid in Germany. You know, already this leads to a big two-tier society, a normal society, which gets way down on tax, and the snitch society, which is, you know, made up of the people who are willing to snitch on others. So the most corrupt, most venal, most bastardly, most, you know, scummy part of society, and they already will be clocking up more and more money. So they will get richer and richer compared to a person with a similar income. So scum society gets richer and richer, poor society stays behind. So what you will end up with as a society is a society of scummy snitches and criminals running the show, because they'll be making, you know, that much more percentage-wise profit per year, and their profit will grow again with percentages and so on and so on. So this rule alone is leading to Germany becoming a scum society at the top. And I can tell you that whatever you have for Germany, you have equivalent rules for Britain and for the US and for every other nation on planet Earth. So your homework now is to find the equivalent law for your country, for your court case, because this is how these snitches are getting that much richer, you know? So what I wanted to say is, as a systems analyst, I'm interested in the long-term implications of a simple rule like that. And you can already see how a rule like that will lead to a two-tier society. One honest part of society, which is truly screwed compared to these guys, and then a criminal part of society, which is being rewarded. And the basic law of economics is people respond to incentives. This is the most fundamental principle of economics. So the entire economic system in Germany is set up with an incentive for snitches. So what you will end up with is a Stasi society, a snitch society, a venal society. And informants do not just provide information. Informants, I think, have to put or can be forced to make their flat available to gang stalkers for viewing positions, for the mounting of directed energy weapons, to shoot at other neighbors, and so on and so on. So this rule alone will lead pretty much to this type of gang stalking, surveillance, and mass genocide of Germans that we are observing now. You know, there we are. This is the evidence that you need. And the other thing that's also that it will lead to in terms of systems analysis of complex human systems is you will have the most corrupt and criminal part of society reliant on easy money. So these people are now the richest. They are much richer than honest society, and they will fight tooth and claw to keep the monetary benefit. In other words, that rule alone has a built-in mechanism for utter ruthlessness in society. Do you understand the mechanism? You are promoting criminals, but because they're criminals, because they're venal, because they're willing to snitch on their neighbors, they are willing to gain a personal advantage at the expense of their neighbors. So a certain fraction of them will be more than willing to mount directed energy weapons. Do you see? So that sort of law is worth gold, and it explains everything that follows. And it also shows you why it's so difficult to cycle Germany out of this, because as soon as you want to take this easy money away from the most corrupt people, they know they can't earn any money by other means, or a lot harder than honest people, because they're stupid, they're corrupt, they're rubbish, you know. So they will do everything. They will even commit murder to hold on to this money. But that doesn't matter. We can still break through, because all we need to do is we need to go into a court of law, and we need to say this is exactly the law that leads to corruption. And by the way, what this actually is putting in, it is unlawful discrimination of honest people. If it is against your nature to snitch on your neighbors, you can never ever benefit from this free government money, this free benefit. So this is a government benefit that is particularly, you know, tailored towards criminals and liars and cheats. So in other words, this law, this tax rule is unlawful. It is illegal discrimination that directly leads to the subversion of society in the old ways of the Nazis and the old ways of the Stasi. So in other words, Germany should be the last country that has this sort of rule. Do you see? Now, Germany still has this rule of law because of this, because of the allies. But doesn't matter. It just changes the court of law where we have to utter this. We have to go to a court of law run by the allies, you know? So we have to go to a British court or an American court and say what the allies are doing in Germany is a direct destabilization of Germany, and it leads to direct, rampant, ruthless criminality, which is exactly what we're seeing now, you know? So that's another basics for the investigation. Please keep an eye on that. Now, okay, another couple of basics. I know I'm running out of time and I would like to wrap up. But one of the things that is also a basic fundamental thing for the investigation, and people asked me about it last time, is the affidavit collection and all the other things we are doing to fight back. Now, let me bring up the actual website. Okay, let's do this together. So let me share my screen so that you know where I'm finding these documents. Sorry, I want to go here. All right. So go to my website, stop007.org. And what I would like from you now, if you really want to help us, I would like you to go to this How You Can Help section. And this is how you can help me, other victims, and also how you can help yourself. All right. So there are certain things we all need to start doing. Okay, of course, there's the monetary investment, please support me, yada, yada, right? But there's so much more. There is the signing of petitions. If you click here, you will be taken to the currently live petitions. And I keep adding petitions, you know, to this list, the ones that I think should be signed. And what you need to know about these petitions is that you can sign them, but you can also print off the number of people, the actual page, and you can show how many people have already signed it, and you can quote that in court, because it proves that this is not a fringe issue. A lot of people do care about this stuff, you know. So, and also the fact that there are petitions about targeting in particular, which thousands of people have signed, proves that targeting is an issue. It's a global issue, okay? So please sign the petitions, and also please start your own petitions. You know, signing these things and expressing our support only takes seconds. And yes, I know it feels like these petitions don't have a weight, but they are one mechanism we have in our society where we can each actually make our views public. Sometimes make them public anonymously, but we can make it public nevertheless. We can actually show support for an issue. So these are the petitions. Now, the other thing that you should do is, and I'm absolutely serious about this, join our campaigns and distribute flyers, you know. Now, let's start with the campaigns. The actual campaigns that have run in the past were the memo to President Trump, and here there's evidence that President Trump has been informed about targeting, which creates a direct liability for his administration. So, you know, there's a mechanism where you can exert pressure on President Trump to actually make public the fact that Americans are being targeted, you know. So that's something that you can have a look at. We also had the tsunami email campaign that was stopped halfway because of the attacks on me here in Switzerland, but this will be relaunched as soon as I actually have a bit of breathing space. You have these petitions that you can take part in. And then the other thing is the Informing the Neighborhood campaign. Now, this is also a basis for the investigation, because what the Neighborhood Information Campaign does is it starts seeding knowledge in the population about targeting happening in the area, you know? So what you can find on this page, okay, there's the flyers at the top, but you can also find a template in German and in English in the OpenOffice format that you can modify. You know, please download OpenOffice. You can download it here and install it. It's just like Microsoft Word, but it's for free. You know, you don't have to keep paying a licensing fee. And then what I would suggest is you either take this template and you modify it, or you write your own letters, but please do start an information campaign in your neighborhood. And the reason why that is important for the investigation is because as soon as you start informing people, for example, here, down here, you can see the neighbors I've informed already. You know, here to the north of my flat and here to the south, I have informed now just shy of 500 people, you know, and these 500 people might be victims themselves. So my home is here, but, you know, if the weapons are somewhere planted here, they might be shooting outwards at other victims as well, you know. But what it starts generating in the population is an awareness that this is happening, you know. People can suddenly start investigating themselves. Are their own symptoms natural? Are they perhaps due to back reflections or shots, or actually direct shots that they are getting? And also, every single person has friends or family, and they can start, you know, looking around their own families and start thinking, is there anything odd happening in my family, in my extended social circle? And should there be anything, they can pass on the information, you know? So suddenly what you have is you have the spreading of information through your local environment. And if you're contacting people who just happen to live next to you, you are really reaching out across your, outside of your social circle. You're reaching out to people in other professions. There might be lawyers, doctors, engineers, whoever, in your local area. And suddenly you'll start informing people with a different expertise and a different background. So I would almost say, if your target, it's absolutely, I would say, mandatory that you do some sort of information campaign in your local area. And do not be disheartened. Do not think that these people will mock you. They will not mock you. I have done I've made the experience that if I zoom in on this image, okay, you can see my house here, the red dot. The blue dot is the police station, just 5 houses down from where I am. Now, the police has refused to stop the directed energy weapon attacks on me, which come from my neighbors. So the number of suspects are very, very small. They have refused. And when I started the information campaign, suddenly neighbors started calling the police station. I didn't know about it. The police told me. But this is exactly what we need to do. We need to suddenly start informing other people so that they can start exerting pressure, so that they can start their own investigation. And maybe there are 100 people who don't give a damn and don't believe you, but you only need one person who believes you and starts investigating, and you have increased the number of investigators in your town, your part of town, by 100%. So it is super important. And when you send a detailed letter and an honest letter to the neighbors, especially if you say, please keep this letter. This is what I have done in my letters here in these templates. I'm explaining, I say, please keep the letter for, posterity, because you might have an actual legal claim against the government should you develop cancer. Do you think people are going to throw that sort of letter away? If you tell them, hey, you might actually, be entitled to millions of dollars or euros or Swiss francs from your government because there are illegal weapons testing programs happening in this area. No, they're going to take this letter. Most likely they're going to show their spouse, their friends, and they're going to say, what the hell is this? And they will start informing themselves, And this is exactly what we need for the investigation. And my experience is also that when you start talking to your neighbors, some people will actually approach you and give you information, and they will say, I noticed something very odd happening in my area. And I had a neighbor, not in Untitled, but elsewhere, at one of the houses owned by my family, where relatives are living. And there a neighbor actually spoke to me, and she said, look, there's something really strange happening in this area. And she accurately described directed energy weapons to me, and I could actually say to her, look, I think what you're describing is this and this, and I'm experiencing the same, And you suddenly start building an actual conversational basis to tell people about this, And I would also recommend that if you have the time, if you have the courage, that you start putting out YouTube videos where your neighbors can get to know you on their own time. They can log in, they can get to know you, they can follow you from the privacy of their home, they can be anonymous if they're shy, and they can just keep a tab on what is happening in your local area. That is super, super important. Now, the other thing that you can do, if these letters are too long or too involved and you don't want to get into these details, or you want to remain anonymous, there's already a list of flyers that you can use, to give them a notice. These are all the flyers for the Americans. I think you can use them immediately in America. If you're in a different country, you can use these flyers as inspiration, slightly change the institutions which are responsible, and you can still use it, But I think it's so important at the start of the investigation that you actively start flyering people and you start informing them, I think that is super important. And then now let's get to the affidavits. Sorry, the letter campaign for Siegfried Thomas is not finished yet, but the affidavit collection has started. I would like to apologize to everybody because, again, I have missed the deadline. The explanatory notes should have been published, my God, on the 9th of August, but they're still not finished. And it's because I was taking care of people the entire last week. So I'm delayed. What will be in the explanatory notes is the entire, background to the affidavit, a glossary, so that we are all meaning the same things under terms like gang stalking and synthetic telepathy and stuff like that. And the explanatory notes will be explaining how I use the data, what the goal is, the court cases that might use them, and so on, So that's the explanatory notes. But what's already there is the affidavit. If you want to fill it in, please download OpenOffice and do not use Word because it will screw up the format. Download OpenOffice and please start filling out the affidavit. If you want to fill it out, it's here. If you want to view it, use the PDF form because it immediately opens up. And you already have a good introduction on the first page, what this is going to be used for, the permissions for use, and you can start filling it in, And please do start filling it in because it's almost 100 pages. It's a lot of work, and all you need to do is write starting dates for a particular offense and then cross-tick the frequency at which it's happening, and do you have evidence or not. And if you, tick these things, please use a capital X, okay? Not a small x, a capital X, because that's really nice and visible. But that will be explained in the explanatory notes, But please start familiarizing yourself with this and start filling it out. Now, the reason why the affidavit collection is super important, and it's so important that we all run this investigation on the one common type of affidavit, it's because at the moment what I'm getting from victims are email reports, okay? But in court, it's the actual weight of these emails or these email reports is essentially the weight of an anecdote. It's anecdotal evidence, Somebody says that this happened to them, but there's no specifics, yada, yada, yada. I can try to use it in court, but the weight is not very high. People can always come back and say, hey, do you even know who these people are? Are these frauds? Are these email addresses that you have generated yourself? Are you sending yourself these emails? It doesn't have weight. So if we really want to stop this criminality, what we need to do is we need to write down what happened in black and white, and we need to put it into a format that is court actionable, okay? So we need to go from the random anecdote to actually something that has a weight in a court of law. Now, what has a weight in a court of law is anything that you say under oath, because you are under the penalty of perjury. You are saying something that you really mean, and you say, this is the truth, I have witnessed this, I have experienced this, and I'm willing to put my name there, I stand up for this truth. And this is what this affidavit is about, the affidavit collection. And the goal is to collect these affidavits and then present them to a court of law and say, look, these are all people who have nothing to do with me, they're not friends or family, they're other victims, And we need to, I had to find a format that is something that works for people who are highly tortured, and it doesn't give too big a time burden on filling it out, but can still testify to the varied numbers of crimes that they might have suffered over many, many. Together with the explanatory notes is a long format for this affidavit where every single item has an actual number, and you can start writing paragraphs about what exactly happened, the exact details. I should have released it already, but I'm sorry I didn't have the time because I'm being tortured and I have so much to deal with. But if you're just patient, it will be there in due course, and then you can start writing it down. I want to release it next time because as you're ticking the boxes with the affidavit template, you will remember stuff like, oh yes, and this happened and that happened. And it would be good if you had that document where you can start writing down what happened, when you think of it. So that should be there next week, together with the explanatory notes, I hope, if a meteorite doesn't crash down on my flat. So this is the plan for next week. Okay, so let me wrap up. So what I talked about today is the general basis of the investigation. You already know it's global. I showed you some literature to start you off with. I'm sorry that most of the books were in German, but please start looking for the equivalent in your language. Start, look for literature that you might quote unquote, or that might help to educate you in your language. If no literature exists, start thinking about writing your own book and publishing it, maybe self-publishing it, or publish it over Amazon, or find a publisher. That would also be something that's very important. Start working pro bono, because as soon as we start working for the greater good for free, we become weightless. The weight of debt slavery is lifted, and we can get projects done that we want to see happen and have put in place. I went through the entire equipment list. I know it's a lot of money, but consider it an investment. And most of the things that I listed are things that you will need for your own evidence collection or for your personal safety. I'm also working on writing something about shielding, but you already know the answer roughly. Shielding is mostly to do with metal stuff that reflects electromagnetic waves and stuff like that, And what I really wanted to do today is talk about voice to skull, but unfortunately I didn't hear back from the people who would have, talked about it. So voice to skull is kind of a bit further along in the investigation, so let me prepare a bit better. And okay, so this is today, right? What I want from you is that you also start making literature lists. So I would like you to start writing down the title and ideally the ISBN number. So this is this thing, the ISBN number here. I'm not sure if you can see. The ISBN number is an international number with which books can be found. And it's very useful because even if it's published in a foreign language or in another country, with the help of the ISBN number, you can find the book and you can order it at most bookshops, Okay, so the books I've named today, you can find them through online retailers of your choice. You can get your bookshop to order it for you. But there's many, many more books that we need. Also, if you have equipment that I haven't listed, please send me the sort of stuff. Now, in terms of timescales, we really need to hurry up, okay, guys? So this is my message to you at the end of the show. We really need to hurry up. My personal situation looks like, well, I am sitting now here in my dining room. I have the satanic goat that way. I have, oh, by the way, the car wreck from my dear neighbors has been removed on Friday, the 10th of August. That was very kind of them. I don't have to stare at a car crash now through my kitchen window. It was very interesting. The satellite dish, the mock satellite, has already been removed when they had to hang up clothes. Now the car wreck is gone, thank you. And then just a few nights back, they built a massive, well, it looked like a satellite dish, using the device that they used to hang clothes. I have to say, maybe it was meant to be a piece of modern art, but to me, it felt like, again, mockery. But it was brilliant because I just photographed the thing for court evidence, and I actually had guests staying. So I have 2 witnesses who also saw the car wreck and all this shenanigans. So, yeah, they were very bemused. And then this satellite dish just disappeared the next day. So, maybe it was just for fun. Either way, bit by bit, these sort of symbols are gently and gradually disappearing as I think people start to understand that this is serious. We are talking about a serious genocide here. People are actually dying, and this is not something to be made fun of, So, okay. Oh, yes, one last thing. This is also the basis of the investigation. Let me just share my screen one last time and point you to something that is very important for everybody to know. People keep asking me, how do I know that there's a genocide happening? Okay, let me go back to the starting page. Well, I know that the genocide is happening, and you can find evidence if you go down to here, death camps and the global genocide on my website, stop007.org. Here at the bottom, so there's all the stuff that's happening to me, the shots and the terror from the neighbors and implants and so on, and poison attacks and so on. But here at the bottom, I start talking about Nazi eugenics and the genocide, the war of terror, which is not actually a war on terror, it's a war of terror, how the budget of the intelligence agencies has doubled in the UK. And also I talk about the wider genocide program, and I draw attention to these genocide plans here, as they were published by a website called Deagle.com. Now, Deagle is a website that has very accurate information about arms sales to all the countries of the world. In other words, this is a private intelligence agency, you know, military intelligence to do with weapon contracts, weapon sales. And for every country, it is publishing population forecasts from 2016. I think this is the population number for 2016, and then the population forecast for 2025 in 7 years. And for example, for the US, it predicts that the population will drop from 324 million to 54 million, which would imply a genocide rate of 83%. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that Deagle is updating these numbers. Every couple of weeks or couple of months, they are updated. So I think the last time I checked, the US genocide rate had dropped to 70% or even 67. I have to check. But this is something to be taken seriously, because this website goes through the bother of actually updating the numbers, and they are running population forecasts for every country in the world, you know. So example, when this rather serious website that has highly accurate intelligence on weapon sales around the world is predicting that the US population is going to drop by 83%, the UK is going to drop by 78%, Germany by 62%, as in more than every second person in the country is going to disappear within the next 7 years. And if for Switzerland, it predicts that every third person is going to disappear within the next 7 years. You better listen up. You know, you might think this is a hoax, but then again, it's a very elaborate and expensive hoax. And if it's not a hoax, it means that somebody is planning to kill us all, you know, or most of us. So this is where my knowledge of the genocide comes from. There's also Deborah Tavares, who's uncovered that the countries, Western countries, have signed genocide treaties already at the start of the 20th century. And according to these genocide treaties, they resolve to kill their own populations at regular intervals. Okay? Now, I'm saying that this ties into UN Agenda 21 and 2030. And for example, Rosa Corey, who you can see here, is also reporting about that, you know. So there's all this sort of stuff. There's what I would call public rituals celebrating genocide, you know, like the opening of the Gotthard Tunnel. There is already the John Birch Society talking about this, and that this is something to worry about, you know. There is things that are highly satanic in, for example, the Olympics ceremony 2012 in London, you know, that I can also go into a lot of detail analyzing at some point. But there's also active holocausts or genocides or mass killings of, for example, the poor and the disabled in the UK. 120,000 poor and disabled people have died because of the austerity legislation in the UK. These people have not died by accident, I'm sorry to say. This is UK economic genocide, okay? And it was even named that by The Independent in the UK, you know? And here you can find a scientific article on the UK economic genocide. Do you understand? There are genocides happening. There's a genocide that will happen as part of 5G, and you can find Dr. Barry Trower talk about that, and other people, for example, the Fullerton Informer, you know, here. And then further down, okay, there's court cases against fluoride and water. And fluoride is an industrial toxin, you know. Yes, it does make your teeth very white and very strong, but your brain might decay. And then you can choose between, you know, your brain and glowing white teeth. But then also there's witness testimonies, for example, by Dr. Rima Leibov about the globalist agenda. And in this clip that I'm linking, she talks about having had European royalty as a patient, and this European royalty was referring to the Great Cull and how it's about to take place, the Great Cull. So she didn't say who it was, and she emphasized it was not the Queen of England, but European royalty seems to be aware that there's some sort of genocide being planned, and it's about to unfold. So this is serious. We have to act very quickly. And in terms of timescales, there are already active court cases running now that I'm involved in 2018. And I would like to start my own court case also in 2018. And if you can work with me, we can do it in lockstep, and you too can have a court case in 2018, you know. I would say we should first of all get emergency injunctions so that the torture and the mutilation of us as witnesses and as claimants is stopped first. And then when the torture is stopped, we can have the time and leisure to actually put together our court cases properly, you know, because it's also not normal that a claimant in a court case is tortured by the respondent and is being mutilated during a court case, which is exactly what happened during my court case against MI6 in 2016, you know. So this is it. These are the basics of the investigation. If you have followed me, you heard a lot of this stuff already. I'm sorry to bore you. If you're new to this, these are the things that we will start using. We will start using audio recordings. We'll start using, you know, evidence. We'll start using literature, and we'll start the investigation. But we all need to have the same sort of equipment. Okay. All right. So this is enough for today. I will now, you know, get myself a cup of tea, and I'll be reading what you guys have been writing in the chat. Next week, on Thursday, again at the same time, I'll be talking a bit more about, I will get into the nitty-gritty detail, and it will be more like what we did with Venezuela. I'll start getting into the proper part of the investigation. In the meantime, I ask you all to please start collecting evidence and start ordering it. Start collecting evidence about which of your neighbors is involved in this criminality. Start collecting evidence for which of the judges, lawyers, police officers is involved. Start collecting evidence on, you know, crimes being committed against other victims. And please start collecting evidence for victims who already have been murdered. We need to know about those deaths, and we need to, you know, get justice for them posthumously, unfortunately. But those deaths must not be forgotten, you know. So please start putting that together, and you know, let's bring all this stuff together. So the investigation proper will launch next Thursday. And until then, I would like to thank you all for listening, you know, and I would like to wish you, well, hopefully, if you're being tortured, you know, as good a week as you can get under the circumstances, but just try to have the courage to move forward, because what your torturers want to do is they want to push you into learned helplessness. They want to convince you that nothing can be changed. And, you know, this couldn't be further from the truth. The reality is that as we're speaking, there are already whistleblowers coming out certainly in the US, but also in Europe, you know, and I encourage everybody to come forward now and make it all public, because you're really picking up speed. Now, on the ground, the situation looks like that. I really would like to hold my head, because I have got head chips which have been worked all throughout me talking. I've got, I think, at least 24 chips on my head, and probably brain chips as well. But north is this way, you know, and south is that way. And as I'm talking, I was being hit in the head from what felt like north, or maybe, you know, east, certainly this quadrant here. So my neighbors during the show have been machine gunning me into the head, and it's extremely painful. But it's so hot in Zurich today that I couldn't sit in my metal shed. And right now my head is being, you know, worked here, and it's extremely painful. I cannot make the neighbors stop. I have published the list of neighbors who are involved, and you can find them under correspondence on my website, and I'll be saying more about them. But yeah, it's these people really don't understand. They are convinced that they can murder me before I can get justice. So right now they're shooting me in the throat here, you know, so women get assaulted in the thyroid and the throat, you know, but most of the shots go into my head because it seems like my head is the biggest threat to them. So there we are. Anyway, so that's the situation on the ground. We need to pick up speed, you know, and we need to catch these criminals. Okay, so that's it for today. You know, have a nice week ahead, and see you next week. Bye for now.